It's just religion. It's just religion.
Hello and welcome to RS in 5 or less, for when complex things need a simple explanation. Is money the root of all evil? Some people say that if you want to find out what somebody values, find out where they spend their cash. An account in Mark's Gospel, where Jesus interacts with somebody disregarded by society, points to the link between a person's attitude towards money and their attitude towards God. We read in Mark 12, verses 41 to 44.
He sat down opposite the Treasury and watched the crowd putting money into the Treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which are worth a penny. Then he called his disciples and said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the Treasury. For all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty has put in everything she had, all she had to live on."
This passage is commonly known as the widow at the Treasury. In order to understand it, you have to understand how a widow was treated in those days and what a treasury is. A treasury is usually where people keep their treasure. In this instance, the treasury was a part of the temple. What the people in the story who are giving money are doing is paying towards the upkeep of the temple. Now, the temple was the Old Testament house of God. It was the most holy place on the entire surface of the earth. It was where God's presence was thought to dwell. The temple was a place of great wealth. It was laden with gold and jewels. Because of this, it required a lot of money to upkeep. Old Testament people of God were required to give 1/10 of their income, which is called a tithe. While an element of discretion was encouraged while giving money, this was often ignored, and people would use the opportunity of giving money as a way of displaying how wealthy they were, how much they were giving to the upkeep of the temple, and therefore how holy they were. A widow is a person whose husband has died. Women in that time would be financially dependent on an older relative, usually a father or brother, until they were married, at which point they were dependent on their husband. If the husband were to die, widows had a very tough time of it. Often they were condemned to a life of poverty. Jesus' response to this woman's giving is very interesting. Although she gives the smallest amount of anybody in the passage, 2 small copper coins, she is praised by Jesus for her attitude towards giving. This demonstrates her love of God. She had very little, and yet she gave everything she had. Although the financial amounts given by the other people who came before her were greater, probably far greater, they gave out of their plenty, and therefore had plenty left over. This widow does the opposite, and gives out of her poverty. This raises a couple of points. Do believers use money as a way of demonstrating how holy they are to other people? Or is their giving an outlet of their worship towards God and God alone? There seems to be a call for generosity from Christ here. He praises the generous spirit of the widow, but has nothing positive to say to those who are giving many times more than she is. Generosity in all aspects of life could be an outcome of this story and how believers might apply it to their lives. There is a link between this account and that of the Christian doctrine of the atonement. Christ gave all he had in order to bless God and for the benefit of all people. Similarly, this woman gave all she had in order to bless God and by extension to benefit the people who would worship God in this temple. For an extension, compare and contrast that of liberation theology, specifically Oscar Romero, and that of the prosperity gospel. What are their different attitudes towards wealth and faith? And this leaves us with a few questions. Is the love of money truly the root of all evil? Is there a minimum amount of money I should give out of a religious duty, or is it all dependent on my attitude when I do so? Can a person truly be a Christian as well as being materially rich? And what are your thoughts on the debate between giving privately so as not to show off your giving, or giving publicly in a way that might encourage other people to give?